Welcome, everybody, to Reframe Webinars Pricing with Confidence, the 2025 podcast/webinar series. And this is part 7 called Pricing Transformations. In today's webinar, we'll talk about the webinar series really quick, a CPE process. These are CPE driven webinars. We'll talk about the Reframe live event coming up in November that we're extremely excited about. Our guest speaker is going to be in it. Carlos is going to give us a few really interesting takeaways. Carlos has been doing a lot of public speaking, traveling. He just left Bridging the Gap in Denver and now going to Canada for another event. And we had a conversation last week, and he's like, Hector, I'm seeing this consistently happen. And I'm like, you know what? That's perfect, because Ron's going to have a lot to say about this. So I'll let Carlos kind of discuss that. Then we'll jump into a conversation with Ron. We're going to make it an interview podcast style, but we'll have a particular set of questions about the transformation economy and how to price in this new transformation economy as we come in. And then we'll finally go into a little bit more details about Reframe 2025, what to expect, what is Ron going to talk about, which will probably most likely be an extension of what we're talking about now, and then close up the webinar. So this webinar series is a 10-part webinar series titled Pricing with Confidence. We started back in January 2025. Every fourth Friday, like clockwork at 1 p.m. Eastern, we're doing this to promote the webinar and also promote our speakers that are going to be in our webinar leading up to our big event in November 2025. We are going to email everybody copies of the slides, a recording link. The recording will be posted in my Hector Garcia's YouTube channel. And for CPE process, you have to be at least 50 minutes. We'll ask 4 polling questions. We won't stop to say polling question is up. So you want to make sure you want to be paying attention. And you should be able to receive an email within 10 days of this webinar. If you have not gotten a previous CPE, just email me. I'll have my team take a look at the whole CPE. So Carlos, talk about the upcoming events.
Yeah, thanks, Hector. Hi, everybody. And excited. So we've got a couple of big events happening. So starting next week on Thursday, we already have a good amount of folks joining me for our virtual 4-week Exactly What to Say certification program. This is going to be exclusively for accounting professionals. For those of you who've been following Hector and myself, last year, we had a conference themed all around communication, how to become a more effective communicator. And we're going to talk a lot about language in this conversation today. So Exactly What to Say is a methodology that allows you to use the right language so that you can speak more confidently and more effectively to be able to articulate your value and navigate high stakes conversations. And the certification is meant to elevate that for you. Then, of course, the big event that we have, this is our capstone event for the year, the Reframe 2025, which is going to be themed around pricing with confidence. We know that we need one needs to be there for the other to exist. We can't just price, thinking that it's going to work. We need to also have the road around the self work and how do we overcome maybe some of potential limiting belief systems, or how do we change the language and the way that we believe that the things that we can provide for our customers. And so we have Ron Baker, who's joining us today, that's going to talk to us a lot about that. And he gets to be our keynote speaker that's going to break us out into some amazing transformational workshops and activities to help us achieve that. Then we have joining us again for day 3, and it's an optional workshop. It's called Rebranding for Accountants, and that's with Chris Doe, who is a branding genius. And so for any information on that, send me an email and we can give you more info on that. So the event, as mentioned before, will be in November 2025 in the beautiful Lowe's Hotel in Coral Gables. Wonderful, beautiful mini town, lots of restaurants. The weather's going to be amazing. We're going to have a rooftop party in the hotel with music and dancing and a lot of great networking. And we've got a lot of partners that are going to come out to also add value, technology partners, so you can learn and network and have a good time. Let's see. So the one big thing we want to say is November 2nd through November 4th. The original price is $2,000, but just a quick reminder that we have an early bird coupon going on around. So right now you can take advantage of being part of this experience for $300 off. And that early bird runs until July 31st. So that's up until next week. So if you're interested, make sure you take advantage of the opportunity. And as you can see in the slides, that would be the coupon code that you want to use in order to take advantage of that. So I want to transition a little bit about some of the takeaways that some of the things that I've been seeing. And Hector, you joined me for the US tour where we got a chance to talk a little bit about some of the Reframe 2024 concepts a little bit more condensed. It was a 1 day event, but a theme that kept on coming up recurring was the language that we heard or we hear accountants use, that when it comes to the challenges that they have around changing their pricing or being able to elevate or use different service offerings or make changes that feel hard. And these were five things that we heard coming on. Like one belief that we need to kind of think about, kind of challenging ourselves is the if I'm not busy every hour, I'm not being valuable. What I've noticed is that in this industry, it's like our self-worth is connected to our productivity. People like to hold that badge of like the fact that I'm working 60, 70 hours is almost like a humble brag. It really shouldn't be, right? The culture should be I'm proud that I'm working less hours because I've been able to work on becoming more effective and automating the right things so that I can have more time for my clients and also give myself the right uh, time to rest and recharge and give myself the vacations I deserve. So I think there's that connection of like if I'm not busy, then I'm not valuable. The second one is the price has to match the time I put in. Otherwise, it feels unfair, right? Like if I'm not putting in the equal amount of hours to show effort, then how can I justify being able to charge something to my clients? So that was like something like we need to kind of shift that because it's not about the inputs. And Ron knows this because this is my mindset shift is when I learned that it's not just about the inputs. How many hours did I put into this, PowerPoint, me being a trainer, right? Like how many hours did I put into this PowerPoint? So like, is it fair that the knowledge that I share, because it took me X amount of hours, then it's fair. Like we talk about being billed by the hour. So really shifting that around the not the inputs that we put in, but the outcomes, the transformation that we create. The next one is clients need to pay for our tasks, not for our thinking or advice. So often it's like if I need to justify that there's some sort of task. The other one, if as I automate this or make it easier, won't clients think they won't need me? Like if I do use these AI tools, like would it be a shortcut? Like, and am I cheating the client in some way, shape, or form? And then I can't charge more unless I do more. So these are just some ideas, Hector, that I kind of saw that like are beliefs that have been holding folks back of having the courage to like just make these mindset changes. And if we go to the next slide, Hector, one of the things that I also notice is that we tend to go from transactional language. It's kind of like our default way of communicating, like how we help clients. Like we're going to reconcile your accounts. We're going to give you monthly statements. We take care of your payroll. We track your expenses. And what I think, and I know that Ron has shared and you have shared, Hector, is how do we move to transformational language? It's like what it means to the clients, not just using our lingo of like the actual deliverables, but really going to the outcome. So we move to the next bucket. You'll notice things like you're always going to know how much money you truly value. You don't have to guess, right? So we're tying it to a feeling or to an outcome, not just to a deliverable. You'll get a clear picture of your business health so you can make confident decisions. You'll notice there's always an emotion tied to it. There's always a future thinking, transformation, an outcome. Your team gets paid on time every time without stressing over the details. If you notice, there's always going to be a word that connects with some sort of future emotional outcome, whether it's a positive one that you want to run towards or a negative one you want to run away from, right? You'll know where every dollar goes, helping you save money and cut waste. Your taxes are taken care of, so you can focus on growth without the fear of IRS letters. You'll have peace of mind knowing your numbers are always audit ready. You can finally stop feeling behind and start fresh with confidence. So using some of this more transformational language, I know, Ron, you're probably reading this for the first time, and I'm sure you're familiar with this kind of language. Hector, I'll turn it to you so you can introduce our guest before we loop him in around maybe some of the thoughts in the observations that I shared.
Absolutely, Carlos. Thank you very much. Great observations. I know Ron is jumping at the bit to comment on some of these things, and Carlos is also very much looking forward to hearing what Ron's got to say about that. About Ron Baker, Ron Baker is a personal friend of mine. I call him a mentor, one of my heroes. I remember the first time I met Ron, and I said, Ron, you're my hero. And he said, never meet your heroes. And I was like, well, I'm not sure where that came from because I was very, very excited to meet you. And I'm very, very excited to continue to call you a friend. I read almost all of Ron's books, including Pricing on Purpose, Mind Over Matter, Implementing Value Pricing. I even bought the first edition of Value Pricing for Professionals, which I show Ron a picture of. He even had a business card inside the book of someone that Ron knows that he taught personally like 20 years ago or whatever. So it's really, really interesting because I bought that off of eBay. But his latest book, Time's Up, it's kind of a summation of a lot of Ron's thoughts. And I know Ron's thoughts have taken one more step forward, so we're going to talk about that. But the subscription business model for professional firms is an amazing book. As a matter of fact, Reframe exists because I wanted to build a conference around a question that Ron asked during, and he asked this question in a rhetorical way in a podcast and stuff, that he asked when his book got released, which is, what would happen if Disney were to buy an accounting firm, or what would happen if Disney were to open an accounting firm. And because I am such a fan of Disney, I have 4 kids and I live in Florida, so I go there a lot. I started making a lot of connections on the amazing things that Disney does, particularly on experience creation. And interestingly enough, Ron didn't discuss too much the experience part. He was talking about the subscription part. But here's where I think the thinking about not just subscribing to a firm in order, to take the transactional money part out of the way, but also to start, selling experiences, selling transformational experience rather than a transaction or a task. So Ron's books is amazing. Check it out. The link is hyperlinked into Amazon. Ron also has a radio show / podcast called The Soul of Enterprise. I believe it's been over 10 years and 500 plus episodes. I've listened to every single one of them. He's a co-founder of the Threshold think tank. I'm not sure if you call it a think tank, Ron, so I'll let you discuss that when we do the introduction. You can become a member. There's a free membership and a paid membership. I'm part of the paid membership. Every week or every 2 weeks, Ron and Ed sit down and discuss, go deep into a deep thought about, the transformation economy. And Ron spoke at Reframe 2023, and one of the lines that a lot of people told me, repeated back to me that they really liked was that customers don't buy units of effort, they buy desired transformations. So Ron, welcome again to the Reframe community. I would like to have a conversation with you. Ron, I'll let you introduce yourself in any area that I may have missed.
Oh, well, thanks, Hector. Thanks, Carlos. I'm thrilled to be here. Hello, everyone. It's great to be back with Reframe, and I'm looking forward to this year. Carlos, I couldn't agree more. I hear a lot of transactional vocabulary wherever I speak. It's frustrating. I really do think this mind shift really and our language both need to change. And I really want to get back to what it means to be a professional, which is, we're not responsible for just performing tasks. We're responsible for creating a result. And I would like people to think about it and this is risky territory to walk into, but I'm going to do it anyway. I want to think about our profession, as any profession, as kind of like your priest or your minister or your rabbi. Think about it. When they come and do a funeral or a wedding, you don't pay them a transactional fee for that. You're paying them to enable them to do things for you when you need it. And I love that framing because it's not transactional. It's I'm here for you. And I still do believe, Hector, that the subscription business model is a great stepping stone into the transformation economy. Where the transformation economy is going to ultimately take us is, I think, unknown at this point, at least for our profession, is something that we're, furiously watching and learning about, but it's embryonic. We're in the early stages of it. And, but I'm really excited about it because I know it's the next thing that we're headed towards.
So Ron, you started a new organization called Threshold, which you did with your co-host Ed Kless. And you published this thing called The Revelation. And I love this thing. And I know you saw me earlier. I did a whole webinar where I actually used this as inspiration to build a chatbot to help me price transformational engagements using, this as an inspiration. And this is a great example of why human thinkers are still really, really important, even in the age of AI, where AI can write anything you want it to write, because these original ideas that are also sort of a reframing of old ideas, right? I mean, there's a lot of this stuff it's like you even quote, something from the Bible, is from the Proverbs. So, and this is not, it's called Revelation, which for some people could have um, a religious undertone. But you've always been a hard believer that the most important part of the human experience is the fact that we have a soul, and computers don't have a soul. And tell us about this revelation for the transformational economy. Why does this matter? Why should people read this? The link is on the slides.
Thanks, Hector. Threshold was the company that Ed and I founded. Ed and I have been working together since we met in 2003. We get along great. We think we challenge each other. If you think it's hard to disagree with Ed, try agreeing with him. So we thought it was time to work together. And so it's not a think tank. I'm not sure what it is, but we're building a community to explore how we move into the transformation economy. And the revelation was us putting down kind of a line in the sand. Ed calls it our Jerry Maguire manifesto, from the movie. And it was really just to get back to the roots of what it means to be a professional and what it means to operate in a profession and what business really is about. We think the real raison d'etre of a business is to contribute to human flourishing. If a business isn't contributing to human flourishing, it's a racket or it's a meth lab, right? We can make profit many ways that are, not so virtuous, but real business, real serious long-term business contributes to human flourishing. And the truth about prosperity is if you give, you will be given unto. Now, that's not just scripture. That's actual strategy, because the golden rule of enterprise is the good fortune of others is also one's own. And we truly believe this, and we really wanted to set out a document that really put a line in the sand and said, listen, the fee-for-service business model is killing professionalism. This trading hours for dollars or just services for dollars, forget about billable hours for a minute. I'm just talking about the transactional mindset that Carlos so well laid out in his language table there. It's soul crushing because it's a business model. Fee for service is a business model, and the business model is never neutral. It reveals what we revere. And I do not revere transactions. I revere relationships and long-term relationships, hopefully lifetime customer relationships and referrals and deep and meaningful impact. That's why I became a professional. I didn't become a professional to bill the most hours, to do the most tax returns, to work the longest hours. I became a professional to help people. I didn't have the vocabulary, but really to add to human flourishing. And so this document lays out all the areas that we see are that are in need of change. Things like, let's stop diagnosing burnout. Most of the time when I hear the term burnout now, it's not burnout. Burnout is simply when there's a difference between demand and resources. It's a resource demand mismatch. Sure, we can go through periods where we have to work really hard, like I'm thinking COVID, when all the people on this call were helping their clients basically stay alive. You're grappling with the PPP loans and all the other stuff that all ran through the accounting. You were probably burnt out for that period of time. It was brutal. But we're not tired. We're not burnt out because we work hard. Everybody on this call works hard. We feel moral injury when we're not living our purpose. And moral injury is a much better diagnosis than burnout, because moral injury says, I feel unhumane or inhuman when I just trade hours for dollars or dollars for services performed. I'm so much more than that as a professional. We're so much more than our scope of work. And so the Revelation talks about all of these issues, and even without mentioning it, takes on private equity. I'm very neutral on private equity, but I see a lot of warning signs because private equity doesn't seem to be challenging the business model or the language even of billable hours, realization, utilization. And you can see this in Reddit forums from employees that work in PE firms. It's all about billable hours. It's all about your realization. If that's what PE is going to be, I don't want any part of it. And I think it's unprofessional. So the revelation takes on all those. It's probably a long-winded answer, but that's what the revelation is.
Hey, Ron, I wanted to chime in because you said something that triggered a thought and a memory, a very revealing memory to your point when you were talking about COVID. Such a very intense experience for the financial profession. And I remember jumping on a call. I used to work at Wells Fargo, as you know, and I was a coach for business bankers. But we know that bankers, as much as accountants, were relied upon to help business owners basically stay alive, financially alive during the PPP era. And I had to get put on a special task group where I needed to handle CEO complaints because the portal for PPP came up literally for like 4 hours on a Saturday, and were overwhelmed with so many applications that they had to shut it down, and it created a terrible impact for clients. And clients were calling desperately trying to get access to the PPP funds. And you probably remember, everybody probably remembers those days and those moments where there was so much uncertainty. And I remember jumping on a call, and the point I want to make is the mindset shift that I created thanks to a really wise leader that said this to us. Because we were talking about when the shutdown happened, right? Only the folks who can kind of come out and work were the essential workers. And the first responders, right? And my boss jumped on a call and he said, we have a huge responsibility to our clients because we are financial first responders. And I would say that that's true for our accounting professionals as well, when we were tasked with that. And that shifted my entire just view of the level of responsibility I had for our customers, for the economy, for our country, right? And as I think about for this profession, this is the mindset that we want to move towards rather than, to your point, going to the transaction or going through the hours or thinking about the inputs and the tasks. So just kind of wanted to share that perspective with you.
Yeah, no, I love that, Carlos. My co-author, Paul Dunn, says literally about the COVID times that financial professionals of all stripes are heroes, absolutely heroes, just like the frontline medical workers. And I totally agree with that. Everybody went to their accountant or bookkeeper and said, what do I do? And I think sometimes we're really financial psychiatrists. We're not just accountants. We get to poke around in our customer's underwear drawer, if you will, and we're privy to things that nobody else is, probably not even their doctor. That's a sacred position, and the impact that we can have from that knowledge of our customers, not just the business KPIs and financial statements, but their knowledge of their goals and aspirations. That's a sacred position, and I just don't want to turn it into a fee for service.
Ron, I wanted to make a quick transition into your books, okay? And I saw you speak probably for the first time, maybe 13 or 15 years ago at a Doug's Leader conference. And you said something that, like, I was hearing from different people the concept of value-based pricing, but it wasn't that sold me. What sold me is that you actually called me on professional on stage, and this is the way you did it, right? You said that the purpose of a professional is to create an outcome. And if a professional is 100% focused on inputs, on tracking time, by definition, that makes you unprofessional. And I was like, I've never, I've never been called unprofessional like that. And I was just, coming off of a job in which I was tracking hours because the engagement was an hourly engagement. And it wasn't until then that I completely changed my mindset to, I've never worked for a big firm. So the whole concept of like realization hasn't been something that has been part of my DNA. But it was just a matter of thinking of the concept of fairness. Like I always thought, the fairest thing to do is to track people for the effort because those are our units of input, right? Is for the effort. So I bought into value-based pricing. I didn't just implement it for my firm. I helped other firms implement it. I even created some courses, highly inspired by your thought process. Courses that some you looked at, some you blessed, some you disagree with, and that's all great. And then you hit us with the subscription model. And at first, I thought you were telling us forget value pricing and think about subscription. But then I started thinking that the value pricing concept, mindset, right, of like creating value first so that it's easy for you to price commensurate to that value. It's really a mindset that works across any type of business, any type of function. As a human being, as a coworker, as an employee, as a consultant, as a parent, as a child, as a brother, as a sister, just having the mindset where you create value first, and then in exchange you get some sort of fair price for. And I know the word fair is actually a triggering word for you as well, but is that, and then you tell us, okay, well, let's take a look at, you erase that, let's take a look at the subscription model. So do you think the subscription model replaces value-based pricing? Do you think it's a natural next step? Are there places where one can work without the other? Can you clarify for us where these two concepts live in your head?
Yeah, it's a great question. I do believe both are still incredibly viable business models. And they are business models. Hourly billing is a business model. It reveals what you revere. Value-based pricing is a business model. Subscription is not just a pricing strategy, it's a business model change. I do think that value pricing is still completely viable. That's why I'm happy to see Reframe, really emphasize that, bringing in Blair and talking more about value pricing and value conversations and things like that. I think subscription is the next logical step, especially if you agree that we are moving into the transformation economy, because the transformation economy, just like subscription, is not just looking at the math of the moment. It's looking and building lifetime customer value. And that's what the subscription business model emphasizes. If you look at its KPIs, heck, if you look at its income statement, it starts with beginning ARR, backs out churn, lost customers, and then ends with the bottom line is not net income. The bottom line is ending annual recurring revenue. It's a very forward-looking income statement, and all the KPIs are derived from empirical evidence of subscription businesses and lend themselves to the analysis of lifetime customer value, which is really what you're growing. And now that we see PE come in, we know that PE values recurring revenue at much higher multiples than, say, reoccurring revenue. The big distinction with recurring and reoccurring is kind of like a rash. You never know if it's going to come back. In reoccurring revenue, there's a lot of one and done projects, a lot of customer churn, whatever. But recurring revenue is what subscription is really all about. And the only way to get that is to continuously create recurring value. And that's why I love the subscription model, because it takes pricing off the table. Once the customer agrees to subscribe to your firm, the pricing decision's done, and you don't have to revisit it every year. Now, sure, you're going to have price increases, and you're going to have to justify those price increases, but you're not putting the pricing decision in front of the customer every year or every time you have scope creep and you have to trigger a change order and then go to the Department of Paperwork to get that signed off. That friction is gone. Subscription is all about surfacing simplicity and making it frictionless for the customers. Frictionless is one click with Amazon is. And that's why I think it's an incredibly viable business model as we move into the transformation economy. Because I don't know how this is going to happen, Hector, but I promise you the transformation economy is going to change how we price. Now, I don't know the full details of that yet, but it will change. This is going to evolve. And that's why I think the future is so bright for us.
So Ron, you talked about the transformation economy, which was the next thing I wanted to discuss. Before we get into that, there was a question from the audience. It's actually a really, really good question regarding the concept of value-based pricing and payroll. So I want to contextualize it from the way I understand it. So our employees are kind of in a subscription model, right? Because they get paid a salary. So we pay them, $100,000 a year for them to work for us. In the old model, old firms, we pay the employees by the hour, and on the sort of raw results only environment type of firms, we pay them a fixed fee. We trust them to be responsible with their time. We trust them to complete the work. We trust them to take vacations whenever they want. They sort of like, we subscribe to them, and in exchange, they give us everything everything that they can give, where they can still have some sort of work-life balance. I don't know how many firms are working on that concept. I believe that most firms, most companies, most employers in the world are in this 40 hours a week basis, or paid by the hour, or pay overtime because of certain regulations, or if they take a week off and they don't have any more vacation, deduct their paycheck. Have you thought about a value-based firm that charges their customers, based on value, fixed fee, and then turns around and applies some sort of value-based pricing idea to the payroll component? Has that come up at all? Have you thought about that?
Oh yeah, we've talked about this a lot. It's not my area of expertise, but I will just say that I think we have the same transactional mindset with our employees that we do with our customers. And I think that's a problem, because I would like to see firms think about the fact that when you hire a professional, you're actually subscribing to them. Like you said, Hector, that's actually a profound insight, because you're subscribing to them, and they're guaranteeing you, the firm, their capacity. And so it's not based upon the scope of the work that you're hiring for. It's based on the nature of the work that you're hiring them for. If I'm hiring an accountant, that's a very different nature of work than if I hire a controller. And a controller is a very different nature of work than if I'm hiring a CFO. And I think we need to stop thinking, no matter how you price, I think we need to stop thinking about scope of work and think about nature of work. Because nature of work says, hey, if you're a CFO, then I expect you to be in the C-suite helping us with strategy. But if you're an accountant, you're probably not going to be in the C-suite. You're going to have other responsibilities, same for a controller. So I think the nature of the work is far more better narrative than the scope of the work. And we need to apply the same thinking to our employees. And the other thing I would just say is I'm all for paying an above market wage. I think today you have to pay an above market wage if you want any chance of attracting A talent. And I'm talking about class A talent. You got to pay high wages and good benefits and all of that. But at the end of the day, you're not going to be able to bribe a knowledge worker. Peter Drucker pointed this out. You can't just bribe a knowledge worker. They're far more loyal to their profession than they are to any one firm in the profession. You've got to give them autonomy. You've got to give them challenging work. You've got to let them make impacts, not just do transactional type work for the customers. And I believe if you're in a firm, it's better to have like firm-wide profit sharing. So I'm a big believer in firm-wide profit sharing, sharing the wealth, sharing the prosperity amongst the team, so we can all, row in the canoe together. Everybody's got their oars in the water, but more importantly, everybody's rowing in the same direction. And I think profit sharing is a good way to do that.
Yeah, that was the exact same thing I was going to add and comment, which is the larger companies, and that's the reframe audience is smaller firms, tight knit, tightly controlled firms by the original founders, type of audience that we have. But when you look at the larger corporations, C-suite employees, their compensation is combined with the growth of their stock, right? Or the growth of their profit. So they've nailed it. And some people think that that some CEOs get paid too much, and that's a different conversation. But they nailed it from the perspective that some CEOs, and I would say the complete C-suite, have the ability to increase the enterprise value by $1 billion, by $10 billion, by $100 billion. That's very difficult to sort of price just on a salary, right? So I think that they've nailed it. We just have to figure out what that looks like in a smaller firm. Like you said, some sort of profit sharing. And there are programs that are like retirement plan, pension plan based profit sharing. But I don't think you're talking about that. I think you're talking about, having base salaries for subscribing to them, for them to give you their capacity, and then have some sort of add-on compensation to the salary that reflects the bottom line growth. And not all growth is bottom line. Sometimes we measure the growth of our firm in our brand value, right? In our reputation, in our penetration in new markets, in our recognition, by a particular niche market, that type of thing. So you said it's not your area of expertise. Are there any resources or books or folks that would you recommend if someone's interested on that they can study?
Wow, that's a great question. I know we've done a couple shows on profit sharing, and in those shows, Ed communicates a formula that he really likes, that you set a goal for the bottom line profit, and then if you hit that goal, then everybody gets profit sharing. If you go above that goal, there's a formula to even share that. And if you go below that goal, you go too far below it, there might not be any profit sharing. So I know that's in one of the Soul of Enterprise shows. And maybe I can get the link to that and send it to you for the notes. But I don't know of any books, but I'm sure there's a ton out there. It's just an area I don't dabble in very much. I'm more interested in growing the pie rather than how you divvy it up.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll transition really quick. Ron, I know you couldn't make it to Reframe 2024, but you will be very proud because I know you love the word transformation. We polled the audience live at the end of the conference. This is anonymous. And say, hey, could you describe in one word how you're feeling right now? How's your experience feeling? And we're very, very proud that people felt empowered to say transformational. Look, transformational and transformative. It was used quite a bit. Why? So I know why that word is important to me. Why is it important to you?
It's important to me because transformations are derived from aspirations. We all have aspirations. We all have aspirations to be healthier, to be wealthier, to be wiser, and to live with purpose and meaning. Those are universal. And human nature is undefeated, by the way. I mean, human nature will always come back. No matter how many times you chase it out, it'll come back in the house. And those universal aspirations to be healthier, wealthier, wiser, live with purpose. The great thing about that, and this is what I love about the transformation economy, is you don't have to gin up demand for aspirations. Everybody's got them. What we have to do as professionals, and why we're in such a sacred privilege position to do so, is you have to have deep, meaningful conversations and ask more beautiful questions. If you can uncover those aspirations, then we can start to guide those transformations. You don't sell a transformation, you guide it. And you can't force a transformation on somebody. They have to want to change. They have to want to move and be motivated to move from where they are to some desired future state, either personally, in their business, in their family, whatever it might be. And we can do that. And not only can we do it, we can do it serially. We can do it over and over from womb to tomb. When the child's born, we can plan to get them into college, at least financially. And when the parents die, we can plan their legacy for posterity. That's incredible. No other business is poised like that. CPAs are. I mean, maybe doctors are a little bit, but we're already there. We have been providing transformations ever since I learned of what that was in 1999 when I first read The Experience Economy by Joseph Pine and James Gilmore. But I didn't know what to do with it, Hector. I looked at it and said, we already provide transformations. We help our customers grow their businesses. We help them retire sooner, build their dream homes, plan their legacies, get their kids into college, plan their retirement, all of these things. We just don't use this vocabulary. Back to Carlos's point about how important the words are. We've been doing this forever, but we don't use this vocabulary. Well, now the transformation economy is already here. And I know that because I'm watching how other companies are messaging and marketing, not their products and services. Products and services say, hey, look at what we can do. Transformations say, look at who you can become. That's a completely different message. Not only is it more valuable and commands higher pricing power, but I think it's more professional as well, because we can actually help our customers become something new, not just clutter them up with services, but actually change trajectories of their life. Is there anything more ideal for a professional than to have that type of impact? And that's why I'm so excited that that word came out of Reframe, the first conference, because hopefully it is transformational, and it continues to be, and I'm sure it will.
So, Ron, you said we're already doing it. It's already happening. The accounting professionals are providing this incredible this existential value to our clients from tomb to womb. But why don't our pricing why doesn't our pricing reflect it? Accounting professionals, in my opinion, and I run into this situation sometimes. Even a person that has been studious of pricing for a long time, where I'll price something and then have my wife look at it and she'll say, "Why you price so little?" I'm like, "You have no idea. You were not even part of the conversation with the client. You have no idea of the context. You don't know what I'm committing to." But somehow she could quickly detect, that I underpriced. Why are we having such a tough time pricing? And when I ask this question out loud, accounting professionals tell me the problem is customers don't see the value. I almost always hear that that answer from every other accounting professional automatically, and I hear it from myself right before I'm going to talk about the price, and I underprice myself. Is I think the customer's not seeing the value. How can we solve that problem?
Well, we got to get out of the mindset of this fee for service business model. And once you do that, it becomes, I think, easier, which is another reason I believe the subscription economy is a great stepping stone into the transformation economy, because now the conversations are not going to be value pricing conversations or value conversations. They're going to be transformation conversations. Where do you want to go next? Who do you want to become next? What do you want for your business next? And we can do that over and over. And the pricing's already taken care of. We don't have to revisit that every time we do something or every new year. And that's why I think it's a much more glove and fit, hand and glove fit with the transformation economy, the subscription model, because again, it's not focused on the math of the moment. But this is a big mindset shift, Hector. I have no illusions that this is going to be easy. This is not going to be easy. This is going to be the hardest challenge I've ever faced, and probably Ed too. I know Ed's on the call, and he just dropped in his value formula. So thanks for that, Ed. That's great. But this is not going to be an easy transformation for firms. But nothing worth having is easy. And humans are born for challenges. We're not born to have lazy days at the museum. We're born to work. We're born to create and throw ourselves into something that's bigger than ourselves. And that's why I think the transformation economy is just as exciting to me as it was to come out forcefully in 1994, whenever it was, and say, we need to bury the billable hour. And by the way, the timesheet too, because they're killing this profession. 30 years on that mission, I think it's kind of complete, but now I see the next thing, and I always want to skate to where the puck's going to be, not where it's been.
So, Ron, the transformation economy is not a replacement to the subscription business model. It's not a replacement to value-based pricing. It's a phenomenon of how humans will serve each other, which will be in a transformational basis, or at least the expectation that humans are going to have with hiring other humans would be transformational. So it's possible that the whole transactional, because that's what we're shifting from transactions to transformation, right? Or from if we go with Joe Pine's book, from experience to transformation. But let's go a little farther. We're shifting from transactions to transformation. AI, or at least the retail version AI ChatGPT, came out much after you were thinking about the transformation economy. Joe Pine was thinking about the transformation economy. We're going to throw a wrench into this. Does AI affect the thinking? Does AI change the trajectory of how we move from transactional to transformation? Are there aspects of AI, or you know what? AI is becoming a trigger word for me. The word I like to use is technological realignment, because that's what's happening, right? So AI is it's what we call all the new technological changes that are happening, and a lot of them are AI, a lot of them are just pattern recognition, but it's just technological realignment, which is we are transforming as a society in what we expect computers to do versus what we expect humans to do. And we're right now in that blurry middle where we're not sure which one's going to be which. We're all scared about what's happening. Some people are saying embrace AI. Some people are saying I'm going to reject AI. Some people are saying there's a new world order coming in with this technological realignment. How does AI throw a wrench in this transformational economy thinking?
I think it opens up all sorts of possibilities for us. I don't view AI as a threat at all because it's not sentient, because it doesn't have a soul. I'm not worried about AI taking our jobs away or anything like that. I mean, sure, it's going to take tasks away, and it may make some jobs more obsolete than others. But the bottom line is all technology does that through the ages. You know, certainly the washer and dryer has taken jobs away. Nobody regrets that. The automatic pin setter in bowling alleys took jobs away. My uncle used to be a pin setter as a boy. You want to talk about a hard job. And nobody laments those jobs being gone, telephone operators, things like that. The bottom line is I think AI is going to give us more time to be human. And there's nothing more human than guiding a transformation with your customers. You can have AI in the background, as my co-author Paul Dunn loves to say, 10% at the front can be human, right? Okay, what are your aspirations? What's your desired future? Then you can rely on AI maybe for 80%. AI can lay out the milestones. It can give you a roadmap. It can be the journey. But the important thing about the transformation is the customer's the hero. It's not about us. The customer's the hero in their own journey. We're just there guiding them. We're their Sherpa, their Yoda, however you want to think about it. Now, we might have a map and we might be able to see a little bit farther than the customer based on our expertise, but the customer's the hero. And the final 10% of that journey, making sure that they arrive at their desired destination and also that they sustain it through time. Think about a smoker who wants to go from being a smoker to a non-smoker. They don't want to fall off the wagon, and you've got to make sure they sustain those transformations through time. That's a very human thing. I'm not sure people are going to want to be coached or mentored or guided by AI. Sure, they can have AI in the background. AI can help. It can even maybe bring things that we didn't think about. But in terms of the human touch, we're always going to want that. I remember a book called Megatrends back in the 1980s. This is crazy. But he had a phrase in that book. One of the megatrends was the more high tech, the more we're going to demand high touch. It's not a matter, I don't think, of figuring out what humans are good at and what AI is good at, because I think AI is encroaching in a lot of different areas, self-driving cars. And I can't predict what AI is going to be better at. It's already better at a lot of things than I am. But one thing it can never do is it can't have a soul. It can't make a connection with another human being. the way that a human can. So I think what we need to think about is, what are we always going to demand that humans do? Give us fatal diagnosis of a loved one or a child? I don't want AI to do that. I want a doctor who looks me in the eye and does that. And you start thinking about all the different things that we're going to expect humans to do, and we're always going to find a way to serve one another. This is why the Hebrew word for work and worship is the same. It's avodah, meaning that work is worship. It's how we serve each other, and we'll always find ways to serve one another. AI is just making it a little bit easier.
That's beautiful. If I could summarize that, is the humans in the foreground taking care of the first 10%, which is making the connection, understanding what people want, understanding what are their aspirations, helping them um, helping them create a roadmap and suggest what they could do. Then you can have, let's say, AI in the background. Okay, so AI is just whatever, you're leveraging AI technology, and then you show up for the last 10%, which is helping them put the finishing touches of it. So would you say that's kind of the best way to think of it? And that's similar to the smile curve, right? Where the highest value of, you think of a smile or a U, and the U is the engagement. The highest value is the very beginning, where you understand the problem and plan for the engagement and walk the customer through the process and tell them what you're going to do and promise them the outcome. And then the troughs, I think it's called, that what's the bottom part of the curve. um that's the all the work, that's all the data entry, that's the cleanup, that's the stuff that we can have the computers do. And then at the very end of that U or that smile curve is the finishing touches, interpreting the report, helping them make a decision based on the numbers that you came up with. And that has existed for years. And like you said, we really don't have anything to fear if we focus on remessaging it, which is why I'm so passionate about rebranding the profession. So, Ron, I wanted to ask you, what does rebranding the accounting profession mean to you? Like, I believe that part of the reframe movement is to rebrand it, is to change people's perceptions in our customers' minds of what we are, what we do, what our role in their lives are. What do you think rebranding the accounting profession means?
Wow, this is a really interesting question. I did a webinar a couple months ago on rebranding Italy. Italy, and I'm talking about as a country, especially with luxury goods. When you think of Italy, what do you think of? You probably think of, Lamborghinis or Ferraris or, all their luxury brands that they have. But they're struggling and they're trying to rebrand it. And I don't know if a country can rebrand for businesses. I think that's kind of the business's job. I listen to people talk about rebranding the CPA profession, and they usually point to the AICPA and expect them to do it. You need to put more money into branding. And blah. I don't want the AICPA to do that. That's not their goal. The individual firms have to do the rebranding. And just like any marketing, I'm all for letting, millions of flowers bloom. Let every firm brand as they want. But I do think we have some challenges as a profession because the younger people don't see it as sexy. I mean, we don't have TV shows. Sure, we've got a couple movies now. And I know there's some things on YouTube that you can watch that, are pretty interesting. But I think it's the nature of the work. And that's another thing that excites me about the transformation economy, because if accountants or if young people can see that what accountants really do is guide transformations, help you achieve your life's goals of being healthier, wealthier, wiser, and live with purpose and meaning and contribute to human flourishing, well, then that's a brand I can get behind because that's what we do. And we do that in myriad ways. There's no one way to do that. There's millions of ways to do that. But if that's what we're seen as doing, rather than just working really long during February to April 15th, where do I sign up? So I'm all for rebranding, but I think it's the individual firms that are going to have to do it.
Amazing. I love the answer. Ron, you're coming to speak at Reframe 2025, just like 2023, you're going to give us one big piece of inspiration, and then we're going to get to work and do an exercise around that inspiration, which we haven't built yet. We're actually kind of like building the plane as we go. This conversation is the precursor of us preparing for the event. I just know Ron is going to hit it out of the park like he did in 2023. What are you excited about this year? And for those that attended 2023, how has your thinking evolved? What would be different in your presentation this year?
Well, as you can tell, I'm excited about the transformation economy. So I'd love to present that just as, what we see coming down. It's already here, actually. I can give you examples from many different industries about it. I'm also kind of excited to have Blair Enns there. I love Blair. I've only met him once, so I'm thrilled to be able to see Blair. And he recently wrote a LinkedIn post where he said, maybe we should think about productizing our services. And I chimed in. I vehemently disagree with this, Blair. So I think that could be a very interesting debate because he's taken us in the wrong direction on Joe Pine's progression of economic value. Productizing services is not what we need to do. Sure, you can do it, but it's going to command a lower price. I think we need to move the other way and go to the transformation economy. And if you want to set up an argument with me and Blair, I'm happy to do that.
Yeah, let's do that for sure. Awesome. I like that a lot. So really quick, we're gonna wrap it up. For those that are excited about Reframe 2025, it's gonna be in Coral Gables, Florida. This is Miami, 5 miles from the Miami airport. It will be November 2nd to the 4th. Event price ticket is $2,000. We have a coupon code that ends July 31st, which is on the screen. It's on the slides. That gives you a preferred price of $1,700. And there's an optional add-on with Chris Doe called Rebranding for Accountants. We're going to see his version of rebranding. So Ron, Blair, Trisha, Carlos, and I will be on stage talking about our version of rebranding. So people that have been talking to professionals for a very long time. And then we'll have someone in a bonus third day add-on do a small workshop to give us their version of rebranding. So I think that if you attend Reframe without the add-on, you're going to get tons of the pricing conversation stuff, value conversation, pricing techniques, and then more of the squishy, conceptual branding concepts you're going to get from Chris on November 5th. Thank you very much, Ron. If you want to add something else or answer any of the questions that are live. If anyone did come to Reframe 2024 or 2025, please put in we only have 25 tickets left. So let the people know that are live in the chat, how much of a transformational experience that was for you, because it's transformational for Carlos and I, because like I said, I made it my life goal to rebrand the accounting profession so it's sought after as the most creative, innovative, and forward-looking of all professions, which is the exact opposite of what accounting professionals are looked at. So I built a humongous, almost very difficult to surpass goal. That way I have work for the rest of my life. Ron, anything to add or anything to answer from the live questions?
No, I'm happy to take any questions though, Hector. If I've been watching the chat, I didn't see any questions, but maybe I missed one or two.
Yeah, so we'll leave it open since Ron wants to hang out for a couple more minutes. Let's take advantage of that. Does anyone have any questions? Okay, Gene has a question. It's an interesting one. Who else has transitioned to the subscription model?
I see a few people in the chat said they're fully subscription now. Alicia asks, Ron, where can we follow your work? You can go to thresholdnow.com/join. And we have a free forever, because Ed and I are proselytizers first, probably. And we have a free forever level that you can join. And we have programs that we put on and content that we make available to that level. And that's where you can find me as well.
So I got a private question that's not in live chat. One is, does Ron have a subscription model business, or does Hector or Reframe have a subscription model business? So the answer is yes. Ron, maybe you talk about what your subscription model business is.
Yeah,
So I think
threshold.
it's just what I think it's important for people to see your thought leadership put in action. So I'll put it up on
Absolutely.
the screen.
We do have a subscription model. As you can see here, it's the focus membership level. It's $150 a month. We give bonus content in there, and Ed and I do programs and make that available. Also calls, things like that. Again, we're trying to build a community of firms that really see this. We realize it's only going to be 2.5% of the innovators that glom on to the transformation economy. Much like I knew it was only going to be 2.5% when we were getting firms to move from hourly billing to value pricing. That took a long time. We don't see the transformation economy taking as long as it did to move people away from the billable hour. We think it's going to happen a little bit faster because of AI and just other changes in businesses. Plus, the other thing I want to emphasize too, Hector, about the transformation economy, this isn't a business model change. This is a new economic offering. This is a new economic era. This is a significant a change in economics as was moving from the agricultural economy into the industrial economy, from moving from the industrial economy into the service economy, which happened around 1920, by the way, and then moving from the service economy into the experience economy, which is what Joe Pine identified in his 1999 book. And now we're moving, and we've already have moved from the experience economy into the transformation economy. So this isn't a business model. This is a new economic offering. And that is substantial because that means eventually it's going to apply to everybody. Whether or not you adapt to it, that's up to you. But it's just like when the buggy whip manufacturers didn't adapt to the automobile. Sure, they're still around, but it's a really niche market.
So Ron, you made the distinction that, and I think this is very important because accounting professionals, including myself, when we think of a new idea, we immediately think, great, I like the idea. Now the next question is, how do I implement it, right? Like that's almost like, okay, what are the steps? What's the checklist? And I think it's important to emphasize that the transformation economy is not a thing you implement. It's a thing that is happening with or without your involvement. And if you are not prepared for it, if you fail to recognize it, you will become irrelevant. That's it, full stop. Customers will expect to not, they won't expect to transact with you. They will expect to transform with you, alongside of you, with your help, guided by you, whichever way you want to do it. And whether they use the word transform, like customers are not going to say, hello, Mr. Accountant, I'm here for you to transform me. Like that's not going to happen. Right. And I think that I think part of the challenge that a lot of accounting pros have, because we are rules-based individuals, we are taught to inspect facts from the past, organize them, and present them the most fair way based on a particular set of rules. Like we are actually not taught to read between the lines or to project out into the future. So the transformation economy is a concept that Ron wants to make sure that our entire profession understands it intimately enough, or so we understand it in such an intimate way that when we start changing our business model, our pricing model to subscription, performance based, or whatever comes next, that we're keeping in mind that customers are expecting transformations alongside that new pricing. If we just implement subscriptions and don't offer a transformation, then it's just not, the customers won't connect to it and they won't buy from us. Like, do you think that's accurate?
I do. I think, just much, and we do have a profession to look at with concierge doctors and DPC doctors. Now, I'm sure there's some DPC doctors out there that you can subscribe to for between $100 and $300 a month that give you peace of mind, make it very convenient for you to get an appointment. You can text them, you can, FaceTime with them and show them things on the phone, and they can tell you whether or not to go to the ER and give you that peace of mind. But the real good DPCs, and especially the concierge doctors, are the ones that are there to keep you healthy, not just to cure you when you present with an illness. And I think we need to go through that same type of transition that they went through. Stop being just there to, cure you when you're sick, but be there to keep you healthy. We can do that with keeping people healthy, wealthy, wise, and live with purpose and meaning. And that's what we're talking about. It's a completely different mindset shift from we're going to do your taxes. We're going to save you as much tax as we can. Look, I love tax strategy. I spent my first part of my career tax strategizing, coming up with loopholes, and it was thrilling when you could save a client $10,000, $20,000, $100,000. But if that's all we're doing, then I don't think that's enough, because I rather go to a CPA who's going to help me maximize my income and my wealth and actually pay higher taxes and be proud to do so. I mean, not proud, but be happy to do so, because that means I'm wealthier and have a higher income. And I think that mind shift change has to happen if we want to move into transformations, because again, transformations are aspirational, and nobody's got an aspiration just to save income tax. There's a reason they want to save income tax, and that's to have more wealth to leave to their kids or to donate to charity, whatever it might be. There's always the means and the end, and we have to be focused on the ends, and that just isn't about tax savings.
Yeah, I'll tell you a personal story, Ron. I don't know if I've told you this before, maybe parts of it, but I changed during COVID, where when I think someone in my family got a cough. We're not talking about like the flu or COVID, a cough. And we try to see a doctor, and they're like, are they coughing? No, you can't go see a doctor. Like, doctors pretty much shut down during COVID because everything was COVID, basically. So we were trying to see, hey, how can we see a doctor to see this weird cough that we have, which is not COVID, it's not the flu. And my wife stumbled upon one subscription doctor that we had in our city, and she called and then she said, hey, we're having these symptoms, it's not COVID, or we got tested for COVID. Like, can we see a doctor the normal way? I know it's May of 2020 and everything's crazy now, but can I go see a doctor? And they said, absolutely. You subscribe to us, we come see you, we'll wear masks, etc., etc. So we tried it. She came back and she said, this is one of the most amazing experiences that I've had. The doctor took an hour and a half with me, an hour and a half on the intake, asked me a gazillion questions, did all sorts of tests, explained to me how they want to work. Hector, you should really look into it. And I was like, I'm not sure. I've been using my insurance type doctors for a very long time. And then I started hearing you talk about all the success stories with all the subscription doctors that are out there. And like, you know what? This is a sign, right? Ron's excited about it. My wife is excited about it. I want to try it. So I started seeing him, and again, he asked many questions about my health, but he was asking about what I do extracurricularly, and it happened to be that I just started coaching my kids in baseball. And he's like, "Okay, tell me what that is like. What do you do? I've never heard of baseball. I mean, I've never done baseball. The doctor's Colombian, so he's very into soccer. What does a baseball coach do?" And I was very excited. I told him, I do this, I do that, and that. And he's like, do you run? I'm like, a little bit, as much as I can. Do you jump? Do you show the kids how to? He started asking me questions. And he's like, let me ask you a question. After 2 hours of training with your kids, and keep in mind, my kids were, I believe, 7 and 5 at the time. He's like, how are you feeling? Do you feel winded? Do you feel? I'm like, a little bit, not too much. He's like, how much longer you want to be a baseball coach for? I'm like, for as long as I can. He's like, when your kids turn 10, 12, 13, 15, they're going to be running a lot faster. The fields are going to be a lot bigger. You're going to have to, they no longer see you as a hero. As a matter of fact, they're going to start playing better than you. If you want to be an effective coach, you have to be fit. And I was like, oh, I know where this is going. And he's like, I can help you. I can help you do that. And that's the way he sold me on the concept of losing weight. For years, doctors have told me, there's heart disease, there's this, there's diabetes and that, and I never listened to it. But he understood that to me, it was a lot more important, how I'm viewed in front of my kids as a baseball coach, how I inspire them, how I help them. And he's like, he saw that that's the way to help me transform. And he helped me quite a bit, but it wasn't until that conversation happened that it clicked into my head. And I was thinking, man, no insurance doctor would have done something like this, or at least would have gotten to the point where they would have received enough information to know exactly how they can help me transform.
Yep. No, that's a great story. I mean, that's transformation. And a fee-for-service doctor can't do that because they spend 5 minutes with you because they have to see 50 or 60 people a day. They're under the same pressure to bill. It's not hours, but it's billing that we accountants are. And that's why they're not practicing medicine the way that they thought they would when they entered the profession. And that's not burnout. That's moral injury when you're not living your purpose. And that's what we mean by moral injury. And that's why I think the burnout diagnosis is incorrect. I love that story because it shows that your doctor, he knows the catalysts for transformation. And this is a topic all in itself. What gets us to the point where we want to transform something, either in our business or in our personal life? And there's different catalysts. A lot of times it's a crisis. It's a medical diagnosis or some other event, a near-death experience, whatever. But there's also other subtle ways that are catalysts for change. We might meet somebody. My meeting with Paul Dunn was completely serendipity. Somebody put us together and connected us, and it was absolutely life-changing for me. We can read a book that can change our life and lead to transformation. People can go to Reframe and become transformed. There's all sorts of different catalysts for transformation. This is the area that we need to be studying because this is distinctly human. This has nothing to do with AI, but this is human behavior, understanding human nature. And human nature hasn't changed in thousands of years. That's why we're still reading Plato and Aristotle and all these other philosophers, because human nature is undefeated. It's there. And the transformation economy it's the epitome of humanness.
Yeah, and I'll wrap it up with a recent business conversation I had with my doctor, because we become really good friends, and on my last weigh-in that showed over 50 pounds of losing weight in 2 years, after we had set a goal and the goal was met. So we had that conversation where what's next, right? And we had the conversation, and he told me, Hector, the, you being able to reach the goal is the reason why I went into this profession in the first place. And then I immediately asked him, is that why you switched to the concierge, the subscription model? And he said, absolutely. There is no way I could have done this with the old model, because before I used to see patients so I can charge them. Now I charge patients so I can see them. And that's
Yes.
exactly what you said.
Yep. That's the philosophy of the minister, the rabbi, the priest. They're paid so they can do something for you. Fee for service is they're only paid when they do something to you, a test, a diagnostic procedure, an office visit. That's not why these folks became doctors. And that's why I am just thrilled with the whole DPC and concierge model out there, because it's literally, it's transforming how medical care is delivered in this country.
Yeah. So Ron, thank you very much. I know you're extremely generous with your time, and you love having these conversations over and over with me and with our audience. But I'll let you go. I'll let everybody go. I guess the takeaways here, like Carlos said, if we are financial first responders, this analogy with the doctor is, how can we be, the concierge doctor, the financial first responders for our clients post-COVID, post-AI? It's a mindset shift, a transformational shift, and understanding about the transformation economy. Ron, thank you very much for everything that you do for us, for the profession. And I'm excited to see you in November. Thank you, everybody. Bye, everybody.
Thank you, Hector. Thank you, everyone. It's great to chat with you, Hector. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.